Hi there, Dave Markham here, and I'm still working on Supervisor of Sweden candidate Patricia Connor's letter to the Suburban News on October 30th, 2011. And we've been going through this because she thinks I think things that I don't think, and I just wanted to clarify that. I appreciate Mrs. Connor saying that she thinks I think certain things, because that's kind of forced me to examine my thoughts and to question myself. Do I really think what she says I think? As I've pointed out in the previous videos, no, I don't think that. And so here's the last of this installments on Mrs. Connor's thoughts about what I think. The last thing she says in her letter is, I believe that Sweden and Clarkson residents who provide the majority of the funding for fire protection should have the right to vote for those who create the fire budget and spend the money. I believe Sweden and Clarkson residents should have the right to vote on capital expenditures. My opponent doesn't believe Sweden and Clarkson residents should have those rights. Well, once again, I don't know where Mrs. Connors is coming from. You know, I said yesterday, I think she's living on a different planet. You know, she hasn't been paying careful attention to the things I've said. A lot of people have said, who have studied this issue about fire districts as compared to fire protection districts, that the citizens who fund fire protection services actually lose a lot of input in the democratic process of developing those budgets and contracting for those services when they turn them over to 5 commissioners who are the principal decision makers of a fire district. You know, a fire district is a whole other layer of government, as I have pointed out repeatedly, and Mrs. Connors doesn't seem to understand. And that whole other layer of government has the power to tax people. No questions asked. You get to elect 1 commissioner, 1 a year, who serve 5-year terms. And they can draw up a budget for fire protection and just impose whatever taxes they need to gain the revenue to support that budget without any voter approval. You know, basically they're accountable to nobody. Now, on the other hand, when you have a fire protection district like the village of Brockport has, the Brockport Fire Department budget is the responsibility of the village trustees. And there's plenty of input during the budgeting process from all kinds of people. You know, there are public hearings on the budget, and people who, from the fire department families, residents, get to come to the budget hearing and have input into the development of that budget. Plus, the village of Brockport has several workshops over a course sometimes of 2 or 3 months on the development of that budget. So there's tons of input. It's not just 5 people making this decision on an ivory tower somewhere in isolation. Plus, that budget gets to be developed with the consideration of other needs of the village, as well as just the fire department. So there are a more balanced consideration of what the overall needs of the community are. Now, Sweden and Clarkson get the contract with Brockport, and they come to the negotiating table, and the elected representatives of the town of Clarkson and the town of Sweden get to negotiate with the village of Brockport on that contract. That may be the supervisor or the town council or whoever they designate, but there's plenty of opportunity for citizens in the towns to discuss the fire protection tax and service with their town council prior to those contract negotiations. So there's tons of input at both the town level and the village level, with multiple opportunities for citizen input over the course of this process. It is extremely more democratic than just having 5 people make all these decisions. So Mrs. Connor's statement that my opponent doesn't believe Sweden and Clarkson's residents should have these rights in terms of input into the fire department contracts is dead wrong. I never said that. Once again, she's putting words in my mouth. And it leads me to believe that Mrs. Connors has not studied this issue thoroughly. It's not just me saying this. It's experts at the New York State Committee on Governmental Efficiency and Effectiveness have studied fire districts in New York State, and in 2008 issued a report. And part of that report, their observation was that fire districts are the least democratic way of providing fire services. So Mrs. Connors, with all due respect, is dead wrong on this issue. You know, if she was getting a master's degree in public administration at SUNY Brockport and had to write a paper on this, she'd fail. Because her assessment of this situation is wrong, frankly. You know, the better experts claim that the more democratic way of overseeing the development of fire services is exactly how Brockport and Clarkson and Sweden have been doing it up till now. And there are plenty of other studies that show that the election at fire district election time, which is the second Tuesday of December, is markedly undemocratic, with most fire districts not getting more than 1 to 2% of the voters to come out to vote on the commissioners when they're up for election. So if you're looking at forms of government, there is nothing more undemocratic than the way fire districts are set up and govern the delivery of fire services in New York State. That's not just Dave Markham's opinion. I mean, you don't have to believe me. But if you want to study the issue, this information is readily available. So there's two things here that I'm complaining about. One, Mrs. Connors doesn't know what she's talking about. And number two, she is, again, accusing me of thinking things that I don't think. She says, my opponent doesn't believe Sweden and Clarkson residents should have these rights, meaning the right to get involved in making decisions about fire district budgets and or fire protection district budgets and capital expenditures. Of course I do. And there's multiple opportunities to do that. I might remind everybody that it was Mrs. Connors and Mr. Milner and her colleagues on the board that had their series of secret meetings about the formation of a fire district, and their quickie special meeting on December 31st that they announced with an announcement on the door on New Year's Eve day, and a quick update on their website, which nobody knew about, where they had their meeting to change the contract from Brockport Volunteer Ambulance Corps to Monroe Ambulance. There's nothing more undemocratic than that. I mean, the Sweden Town Council has operated in one of the most undemocratic ways that you can consider, and plenty of people have complained about it. The latest thing is the closing of the recycling center, which residents had no idea of until some of the residents appeared at the recycling center on Saturday, October 22nd, and were handed a letter saying that the town council has decided to close the recycling center at the end of the year. Done deal. Too bad. That's what we decided was in your best interest. No opportunity for community input, no community meeting or public hearing. They just decided that they know what's best for the people of the town of Sweden. Now, a lot of people are very upset about that. So I find it very odd that Mrs. Connors would be accusing me of wanting a more undemocratic way of managing fire protection services for town residents. Nothing could be further from the truth. Also, let me remind everybody that the contracting process, which the town of Sweden is engaged in with the village of Brockport, has brought about one of the most effective and the lowest cost fire protection tax rates in Monroe County. You know, the current democratic system works very well. Why they would want to move to a less democratic system where you have 5 commissars up in an ivory tower making decisions that don't require any other approval than what they decide is beyond me. So, again, I'm encouraging everybody to look into these issues, to study them carefully. You're being misled. I'm willing to debate Mrs. Connors or anybody else that has questions about this. It's easily researchable if you want it. I've got the information. And, you know, the people who are saying this stuff just aren't very bright. I mean, I don't want to say they're stupid, but they haven't done their homework. They don't know what they're talking about. I've studied this issue ever since it's come up. There are a lot of finer minds than mine who have addressed these questions. And apparently Mrs. Connors is not aware of this. And I think that's sad. Having a fire district is the least democratic form of government that we have in New York State. And that's what the Town Council of Sweden and Clarkson have been promoting and want you to approve. Luckily, you get to go to the polls on November 29th and vote it down. I hope you do. There's nothing wrong with the way fire protection services have been delivered in the town of Sweden. Also, this silly threat that they're not going back to business as usual, when the business as usual has been the most effective and the most cost efficient and customer satisfying way to deliver fire protection services, just flummoxes me. I don't know where they're coming from with this stuff. The good people in Sweden Village and Talamora Drive Trail really want their fire response to come from Bergen or Spencerport, or Clarendon, when they got a fire station about a mile down the road at the Cape and Hose on the 5 Corners. I don't believe that. You know? Now, maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out on Election Day. You know, I hope you'll come out and vote for me on November 8th. You got to write me in. I'm not working for any party, so I'm not on the regular ballot. You know, I'm working for you. And I take that very seriously. And I believe in open government. I believe in honesty and transparency. And unfortunately, I'm having to deal with people here who like to trade in innuendo, disingenuous, misleading statements, psychic mind reading that they think they know what other people think when they haven't even asked them what they think. So anyway, you know, Bob Charrington said to me, you know, Bob was a social studies teacher in the high school for years and years and years, and I guess about 10 years ago he ran for Sweden Town Council, and he got trounced pretty heavily, and Bob's in his mid-70s, and he says to me, Dave, you have a snowball's chance in hell. And I said to him, Bob, after the election, I'll see you in hell. Huh? And somebody else said to me, Dave, I hope you don't melt. Well, working with good people like you, we're all in this together. And I want what's best for the Brockport, Sweden community. And I'm more than willing to work with anybody. Even if you disagree with me, I think we could have honest disagreements and still work together towards our common goals. So I look forward to doing that. In order to do that, you've got to write me in on November 8th. Just put Markham at the bottom of the supervisor's column on the bottom line there. Just write in Markham. You don't have to spell it exactly. As long as they know who you're intending the vote to be for, it'll count. And I'm counting on you. And if you give me the opportunity, you can count on me. Okay? Thanks for listening to me. I really appreciate it. Peace.